Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Kitty and I'm an academic junior doctor working in the UK. For the last couple of months, I've been taking a hiatus from YouTube. I think my last video was back in February, and I'm really sorry about that. And there's a couple reasons for this. One of those was that I had a much busier job that I rotated onto compared to the one I had before, and also because I was spending all my time studying for the MRCS Part A, which is a written exam that you need to take in order to eventually enter surgical training in the UK. And as you might be able to tell from the title of this video, yesterday I found out that I passed the exam, which is a huge weight off my shoulders and a great relief after months of hard work and studying. And actually the Royal College of Surgeons website was down for about 12 hours yesterday because of how many people were trying to access the service to see their results. So I spent the entire day basically just like refreshing the page before I could even log on. So it was really great to get out of that limbo and know that I've passed. Anyway, I thought that now the results are out, I'm no longer waiting in a state of limbo. I'd make a quick video reflecting on how I found the exam, the studying and the experience as a whole. And when my thoughts are more collected after I've calmed down a bit and thought about what I actually did, I'll make a more detailed video about how I actually studied for the exam. Overall, I thought it was definitely a difficult exam. The pass mark for this particular sitting, so April 2021, was 72.9%, which is pretty comparable to previous pass papers and the pass mark then. The pass rate was around 42%, I think, which is actually higher than normal. Usually the kind of benchmark is about a third people would pass. In terms of the questions, like most medical questions and exams, there were definitely some rogue questions in there that I was unsure about, or there were questions where it seemed like more than one answer could be correct. But, you know, we're all used to that by now in all medical exams. But overall, the quality of the questions and the content of the questions were pretty much what I expected from doing the question banks and past papers in my revision. I'm also definitely glad that I made the choice to take this exam whilst I was in F1, because yes, whilst there were a lot of questions and a lot of knowledge that you needed to learn or relearn, for example, detailed anatomy like the brachial plexus, or learning a lot more about general surgical conditions and their management and particular procedures and their approaches, or structures that you encounter during a surgical operation. All that stuff is new and you need to learn, and there's a big bulk of knowledge there. However, there were also a lot of questions that were based off of knowledge that you learned in medical school, and I find that with more niche topics, for example pediatric surgery, that was pretty much just the same level of difficulty I found compared to medical school finals. So this is what I thought anyway, and the reason why I took it in F1, but in retrospect I definitely think it was the sort of thing that the closer you sat to medical school finals, probably the more advantaged you will be. Because I personally think I would have forgotten a lot of that stuff from medical school if I waited another year or two, but obviously that's just my experience. In terms of preparing for the exam, it definitely took a lot of time and effort, and I was studying all the time. Whether that's during a quiet lull during the day of my job, I would go to the doctor's mess and find a computer and start doing past questions, even just for half an hour, or you know, when I come home from work or on weekends or on off days, I was just studying all the time. And that's definitely a very hard thing to do when you're working a full-time job compared to when you're a medical student, where your hours are a lot more flexible, which is obviously when I did my last big exam, the medical school finals. I think luckily for me, I ended up studying for the majority of this exam during a rotation that was actually less busy than I thought it was, and that was actually in part due to the second wave of the pandemic, because a lot of the elective patients and elective surgeries were cancelled, so we actually had a lot less patients than we thought we would. So I ended up having quite a bit of time sometimes to go and study just during the day hours, which was certainly helpful. And it was a rotation where F1s don't have any night shifts, so again that definitely really helped with squeezing in hours of studying. If I was on a more busy rotation like I am now with general surgery / vascular surgery, where there are a lot of on-calls and the days are long and there's lots to do, I definitely wouldn't have been able to squeeze in as many hours. So definitely take that into consideration if you're considering taking the exam. Choose a rotation where you're sure that you can study a bit more and the hours a bit better. But even so, having been working on a less busy rotation whilst I was doing the majority of my studying, I still found that I had to stop almost everything else I was doing. So that included like academic projects and YouTube. I just put all my time into studying, and sometimes it can feel very exhausting because you're working a full 9-hour day or whatever is minimum in your full-time clinical job from 8 till 5, and then you're coming home and you're working some more on your computer and using your brain power. So that was definitely difficult and took some time to get used to. But I think once I got over the initial hump of accepting that these are my working hours now, which is just basically the entire day, your body and your brain gets used to it, and then you can kind of maintain and sustain that level of high number of hours of working. But it was not easy. In terms of sitting the exam, so it was an online exam this year because of the pandemic. Usually in the past, you would go to an exam hall and you would do everything written on paper in sort of normal exam conditions as you would in medical school. But since September 2020 this year, the sittings have all been online. So you basically just sit at home. I sat here, in fact, and you do it on your computer with video monitoring you all the time. I thought that the exam software was all right. It got the job done. It was easy to use. It was intuitive. Things that I found difficult was the fact that you knew you were being recorded, and there were lots of rules about how, or if you looked away or if there were any loud noises in the background, you might get disqualified or questioned about the integrity of your exam. And I really didn't like that, because sort of throughout the entire time, every now and then you had to check that you were in the frame of the camera, and then you also had to make sure that you weren't leaning too forwards or backwards or stuff like that. And in the back of my mind, it was just kind of like, even if you want to reach for like a glass of water or something, you mustn't look away. And I think that was quite stressful. It wasn't nearly as distracting as I thought it would be before I sat the exam, but it was still like an extra thing in the back of my mind that I didn't really enjoy. And at the end of the thing, so Part A of MRCS is split into 2 papers. So you have paper 1, which is 180 questions, and paper 2 is 120 questions with slightly different content and a break in between. So the first paper for me went fine. I sat it uploaded, I went and had lunch, and I came back for the second paper. But at the end of second paper, so literally the end of the entire exam, my exam software froze for about 30 minutes on my computer, and I was freaking out because whilst this software was open, one of the kind of anti-cheating strategies they have was so that you can't use anything else on your computer. You can only have this thing open and you can't close it, and it was just frozen there. And I remember calling the helpline, really panicked, being like, oh my god, like what's gonna happen? What do I do about this? And they said to me, oh, just restart your computer. And I was scared shitless. I was like, are you sure? I mean, that seems ridiculously dodgy. And they were like, oh no, because it should save your answers every 60 seconds, so it should all be on your computer. So I did it and it worked, but oh my, that was scary. That was definitely not a great timing for it to happen. And unfortunately, a colleague of mine as well told me that this same sort of similar thing happened to him at the end of paper 1, so actually it ate into a lot of the time he had for the next paper, so that was not great. And so there are definitely some technical issues still to be hammered out, but I think overall it was, anecdotally anyway, it seems like it's going a lot better than the first time they trialled him back in September, but still it's not an entirely stress-free experience that I would expect if I just went to an exam centre and someone handed me a paper and pencil and told me to do the exam. So that's that. And as I said, in addition to that, the whole waiting for the results thing, the servers on the website being down, so I spent literally all of my day just sitting there trying to refresh the results. Like, it does make you wonder, why did you pay more than $5,000 to sit an exam in your own home, on your own computer, and not be able to access the results on time? But you know, that's a can of worms for another time. So that's it. Those are my immediate thoughts about the exam after the results are released. As I said, once I've had more time to collect my thoughts and things, I will do a more detailed video delving into how I studied for the MRCS and the resources that I used, and hopefully it'll be useful for those of you who are considering surgery as a career as well. But for now, I think I'm just going to enjoy my weekend. Remember to like this video if you've enjoyed it, and subscribe so that you get notified when new content comes out. That's it for now, and I'll see you next time.